Taipei. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. The European Union has condemned what it called the brutality of Sudan's rapid support forces after the paramilitary group captured the key city of El-Fasher. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas has stated that civilians were being targeted based on ethnicity, describing the RSF's actions as barbaric and demanding protection for aid workers, responders, and journalists in RSF-controlled areas. The EU has called for immediate and safe humanitarian access to those trapped in the city after an 18-month siege that has left thousands dead and starving. In nearby North Kordofan, 5 Sudanese Red Crescent volunteers were killed and 3 others went missing after the RSF seized control of Bara town. The RSF has descended from the Janjaweed militias accused of genocide in Darfur 2 decades ago that has been fighting Sudan's army since April 2023 in a conflict that has devastated the country and displaced millions. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Ross Feingold. He's a political analyst, joins us live from Taipei. Thank you very much, Ross, for staying with us. Now looking at this, what more is going on, and could there be peace in a near future, in Sudan?
We seem very far away from any peace between the army and the rapid support forces. Unfortunately, there are other countries that, frankly, have played a role in this conflict, supporting both sides, and that's been well documented. And the reasons why those countries do that is for their own benefit, whether that's a political benefit or an economic benefit with access to certain resources that Sudan has, which could be exported. This has also, unfortunately, become somewhat of a forgotten conflict over the past few years. The wars in Ukraine and Gaza have gotten so much media attention, as well as the attention of governments around the world. And the conflict in Sudan, is as deadly as it has been for civilians, has not gotten sufficient amount of attention. Now that's changing in recent hours. There's an enormous amount of media coverage. There's an enormous amount of discussion among non-government organizations about the potential for a civilian tragedy. But is the international community in a position to really do anything about this, given their inability to stop the war over the past few years? It doesn't look optimistic that the international community could really do anything to change the situation on the ground.
And now looking back at this, how might this history of RSF and its links to Janjaweed influence this Sudan's crisis further?
This is why there's such concern about the massacre of civilians, because there is a history of the RSF's predecessor organizations massacring civilians in this part of Sudan. So no matter what the RSF leadership is saying in recent hours, that they want to protect civilians, or they want to create a safe corridor for civilians to leave El-Fasher if civilians really want to do so, frankly, nobody believes them. They have no credibility to say that they're going to protect civilians. So there's a very legitimate concern by countries and NGOs who are starting to pay attention to this issue, but whether or not they could actually do anything, it's hard to be optimistic.
And Ross, is there any country or any kind of international national body that could go in and mediate between them? But we also saw that Red Crescent volunteers were killed today.
Very difficult. The United Nations has not succeeded in mediating this dispute over several years, just like the United Nations has not succeeded in other disputes, whether that's Ukraine or Gaza or Myanmar or other parts of the world. So one cannot be optimistic that the UN could play a role. The EU Probably not. And that really leaves the countries that have supported one side or the other in this conflict. And there's a lot of documentation and evidence about the involvement of certain countries from the Persian Gulf as well as Russia. They might be able to play a role, but they've been looking out for their own interests in this dispute, and they've not played the role of peacemaker. That leaves one other option, which is President Trump, because he's taken an interest in playing peacemaker in different disputes around the world, and maybe he'll take an interest in this dispute.
With that, I would like to thank Ross Feingold for always joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Central America. U.S. Appeals Court awaits if Argentina must pay investors $16.1 billion over its decade-old seizure of state oil giant YPF. The Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Manhattan will review U.S. District Judge Loretta Prescott's September 2023 award to two minority stakeholders of YPF. Burfold Capital, which financed most of the lawsuit, could earn billions if investors do win, while Argentina is expected to appeal any loss to the U.S. Supreme Court. The outcome of the case carries significant political and economic weight for Argentina, as well as its president, Javier Milei, having recently secured a decisive victory in the midterm legislative elections. However, a ruling against Argentina in the YPF case could cause a multi-billion-dollar judgment that would add immense pressure to an already fragile economy burdened by debt, high inflation, and shrinking foreign reserves. Such a setback could weaken investor confidence and complicate Milei's efforts to attract foreign investment and fuel domestic opposition criticism. Now we have a breaking news. Russian President Vladimir Putin has announced fresh advances in Moscow's nuclear weapons programs, declaring the test launch of the Poseidon strategic device a huge success, according to state media. Putin has also stated that Russia has successfully tested the nuclear propulsion system installed in the Burevestnik cruise missile, adding that its onboard reactor can be activated within minutes and seconds. The Russian president further has claimed that technologies from the Burevestnik program would be used in Russia's planned lunar missions, praising the country's scientists and saying Russia can be proud of their achievements. In a separate remark, Putin has stated that Moscow is prepared to allow journalists access to a location where he alleges Ukrainian troops are currently blocked. Now we move on to Europe. Czech election winner Andrej Babis has stated that his ANO party will sign a coalition agreement with the Eurosceptic Motorist Party and the far-right anti-European Union and anti-NATO SPD party on November 3rd. The parties are working on a joint government agenda that is set to shift policy towards higher fiscal spending and less aid for Ukraine's defense against Russia. The coalition is also aiming for less support for the European Union's migration and climate policies. President Peter Pavel has tapped Babis to lead government talks on Monday. Babis has also stated that he aims to form a government by mid-December, and which does not have a parliamentary majority, has been in talks with the motorist and SPD parties since the October 3rd and 4th elections. The coalition of these parties would hold a combined 108 out of 200 seats in Parliament's lower house.